wait for people to join. Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome. While we wait for people to join, whether you're coming in from LinkedIn, online, whether you're here live at the webinar, or if you are watching somewhere else somehow, please drop in the chat where you are dialing in from, what brought you to this webinar, and what you're excited to learn more about. And of course, we're playing some actual Gen Z music in the background as well.
TikTok music.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to today's highly anticipated webinar, Unlocking the Gen Z Workforce, How to Attract and Retain Young Talent. You were brought by three hosts, all of which are Gen Z. I'm actually, for the first time in a while, I have to say, I'm the oldest person here, which is rather scary. But I am thrilled to be here. I'm Sam Nesbitt. I am excited to share with you some of the things that we've learned managing Gen Z, hiring Gen Z. We're all here for a shared purpose to explore the incredible potential of Generation Z and uncover strategies to attract and retain young talent. We are going to embark on a journey of discovery, shedding light on the unique characteristics and preferences of this generation. We're going to delve into motivations, expectations, and aspirations of Generation Z in the workplace, and lots of practical strategies that your organization can use to create a brand that resonates with Generation Z, developing recruitment approaches to attract the best talent. So to give you a glimpse of the world of Gen Z, the first thing to know is that Gen Z comprises about 27% of the global population, which is actually the largest generation in history. So to quick introduce yourselves and to introduce myself, I'm Sam Nesbitt. I am the CRO at Apprentice. I joined as an apprentice very early on when the company started and started my own company with my entrepreneur. We are also joined here with Marco. Marco, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Sam. Welcome, everyone. The next hour is going to be really super engaging and exciting. So yeah, please join us and ask questions. My name is Marco Stavro. From the accent, hoping you can tell I'm from South Africa, in the south of the African continent. I am a Gen Z. I'm currently 19 years old. I run a consulting company that actually helps large organizations better connect to Gen Z. We work with a lot of banks, insurance companies, specifically, and Fortune 500 companies all around the world, specifically HR and marketing teams. My background is in marketing. So yeah, I specialize in talent acquisition strategies, and of course, engaging Gen Z from a retention and employee perspective as well. So super excited to be here to share my knowledge and examples. And yeah, make sure that you save your questions, and excited to engage with you guys today.
Great. I guess I'll introduce myself. Marco, it's amazing to have you here, and thank you for taking the time to host this webinar with us. I'm Simon. I have been at Apprentice for 2 years, and I'm currently a marketing and engagement manager. I think when it comes to Gen Z, I have a lot of personal experience that I can account for working and what has really kept me at this company for such a long time, and hopefully going to keep me for the next however long and how long this journey is.
All right. So I guess this is my slide. And yeah, so we're going to start off by, well, the first thing I always ask is, who the heck are Gen Z, right? So we're hearing this buzzword the whole time, Gen Z this, Gen Z that. And they were born predominantly from 2010 to all the way to 1995 to 2010. So the oldest being 28 and the youngest being 13. There is a bit of debate in terms of the exact date, but what's really important to know is that most of them are entering the workforce after just studying, and a lot of them are still in high school. And so why it's significant to care about Gen Z is, well, they're the future consumerism. In fact, we know that their global spending power is already over 600 billion, which is quite crazy to think about, that most of the consumerism coming through in all angles from retail to online is young people, and their spending power is just growing and growing. So that's why you should care. Of course, we grew up in this age of the internet. Most of us grew up with phones, and so our attention spans are really, really short, only 8 seconds. So you have 8 seconds to grab a young person's attention. And that's why we've seen TikTok do so well. We'll get to play this TikTok video in a bit. But the reason why this platform is blown up is because we are totally wanting touch points the whole time. And the more we see our friends and see things we like, the algorithm plays within that. And so it's really important to consider when you're creating content or when your company is engaging young people, when it comes to onboarding, when it comes to marketing, how are you positioning yourself for 8 seconds? And so that's a really great marketing question to answer. Video content and live streaming is absolutely blown up. YouTube being the world's biggest search engine besides from Google. And so learning to create content that engages young people so that they can, from an employee point of view, I work a lot with companies from even like these large thousands of employees. And one of the biggest things we're seeing is that they don't really care about their work. They don't care about whether they like their boss and they like their coworkers. And how do they see that? Well, internal content. So what we want to try to do is drive internal engagements with your workforce. So that's something really, really cool and exciting to think about. Mobile optimization is a huge thing. A lot of businesses, if you go onto their mobile website and landing pages, are not optimized. And so that's really important to consider. Is your business, are your guys' landing pages optimized for people's phones? Because we know how much Gen Z spend. In fact, the average American person, teenager Gen Z, spends more than 7.5 hours on their phone every single day. And so we know social media platforms are blowing up, and newsletters and email Gen Z do not like. And so the next question is, okay, well, how do we engage with them from that point of view? Text newsletters on Messenger or WhatsApp is a really, really great way. So just play the video and then we can move on to the next slide. Cool. So I spoke a bit about this in terms of engaging them. Influencer marketing feels such a powerful thing. Influencer marketing. So how do you use from a practical basis? A lot of when companies think about influencer marketing, they think about these huge budgets and paying celebrities millions of dollars. But what's really cool is something called micro influencers, which basically are smaller celebrities, micro celebrities that have between 10 and 100,000 followers, and using them in a specific niche to actually engage. And one of the things we've seen really success from a sales point of view, if you've got a consumer product or a retail product, is actually doing these influencer campaigns for specific events. So what we'll do is, for example, Walmart, right? We'll have an influencer meetup at Walmart for launch of a specific product. And then the Gen Z will get engaged with their favorite celebrity. We've seen how great Mr. Beast did that with Beast Burgers. He had over 100,000 people and enter a city mall and actually buy his burger. And so it's a really, really powerful and high return strategy. And then gamified experiences. So engaging, a lot of ads, a lot of engagements are really boring for Gen Z. And so a lot of your products and services should be designed towards Q&A and engagement and short, like we said, 30 seconds. The metaverse is amazing. We're going to see stores, people try on clothes in the metaverse. I know Africa's got their own metaverse currently called Africa Rare, which a lot of companies and corporates are starting to engage with. So thinking about how do you enter the metaverse, how do you enter using AI to really engage with Gen Z? Something just on an interesting story on this is something really cool called virtual influencers, which I think is a part of this big Web3 craze that's going on. What virtual influencers are is they are CGI AI generated people that are created by an organization that are independently owned. And essentially you wouldn't be able to tell the difference if you were to search them online. I know Calvin Klein's got one. And so they have their own Instagram accounts, they have their own personalities. Some of them have got kids, some of them got dogs as part of their personality. And then you get to control them and essentially promote your products through these AI generated. They're called virtual influencers. So there's a little quick free nugget. Moving on to the next slide. So yeah, from a personality point of view, Gen Z parents faced the 2008 crash, they faced 9/11. These are all factors that contributed to how they were parented. We know Gen Z are extremely competitive. I don't know if you've ever noticed in the workforce, some of your younger employees getting to work first, and you're like, why are they so competitive? Why do they coming to work so early. And it's actually because they believe that if they engage with their employer, they're likely to get a promotion. And if their boss likes them, then that's part of their growth. And so, we know that they're really authentic. They want realness. We've seen the app called Be Real do so well because of this. And one of the things even from like an employee point of view on LinkedIn, if you're putting a job spec out or a job post, showcase the finances, showcase, is there growth opportunity to grow in the company? Showcase, is it once a week in person or is it, a hybrid approach? Really be vulnerable in showcasing that, because Gen Z will navigate towards what they like instead of them joining a culture and then just leaving. So yeah, transparent branding, as we mentioned. And then social causes are another factor that Gen Z really consider. So if they go to your guys' website, they want to see, are you supporting human trafficking? Are you supporting world hunger? What social causes your company, besides from money as a bottom line objective, how are they contributing in other ways? So that's something really interesting to be thinking about as well. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Pratibha. I lead Cognizant's Social Impact Program Outreach for Asia Pacific, and we are a part of the Alliance for Action on Corporate Purpose. Purpose is the North Star that helps guide us in the direction which creates the most positive outcomes for everyone, the business, our clients, our employees, and yes, our planet. When they understand that there is a strong link between their business and the community, they can actually make their corporate purpose work for their business. Together, we build a better society, create closer bonds, and improve everyday life.
So before we move on, if you have a burning question, please write it down and post it in the chat before we move on. I'm not going to answer it, but really want to engage with you guys. I have shared quite a lot of information. So yeah, thank you again for joining us. And we're going to be moving on to furthermore attracting and hiring. All right, so yeah, attracting Gen Z. How do we attract? 63% voted for a hybrid work model. Although Gen Z are still, I find the sweet working with companies, both from an SME point of view and from a big, large corporate point of view. The sweet spot is around 2 to 3 times in person, and then the rest being online. And the reason being that we know from a training point of view, unfortunately, Zoom and hybrid approaches are not optimized for Gen Z. They say they understand, but then they've got 100 questions about the work and the structure and the systems. And so I have the belief that we need to integrate both from a connection and human point of view, from a systems point of view, but then also catering towards Gen Z because they do want flexible work. In fact, it's one of the biggest things that they look for. So on your guys' job specs and when you do job posts, make sure that you're sharing. Is it flexible working hours? At the same time, you want to integrate structure and discipline, especially in the early stages, because Gen Z can get really lost really quickly. And we know that within 6 months, they're likely to move to another job. And that's quite a scary thing from a bottom line point of view. Average cost in South Africa is 57,000 Rand per employee. So that's around $3,500 to spend to get an employee. So you don't want to be spending that every 6 months. And so, yeah, what does that mean for you? Well, as I said, 2 to 3 times in the office and enabling them through different engagements. I think one thing I really like is companies that have mentorship programs. So when you, either if it's a graduate program or it's a normal employee relationship, how are you mentoring them from a human point of view? Are you taking them out for coffee? Are you asking questions about their personal life? Do you know their hobbies? It's incredibly frustrating when I sit in a room with executives. Firstly, they don't know who Gen Z are. Secondly, they know nothing about their employees from a personal point of view. And at the end of the day, we are all humans. And so in order to get the work efficiency and get the results from an ROI point of view, we need to first humanize everything. And as much as they're very frustrating for many people working with these young people, it's really important to consider them as the world changes, as technologies advances, they do have value in many unique ways. Next slide.
Yeah, so when it comes to hiring Gen Z, there are many different platforms that you can go to in order to find the perfect fit for your company, as well as find an array of Gen Z people who are looking to work and have that sort of drive to get into the workforce early. One of the greatest platforms that you can use is LinkedIn. I know that it's such an overused platform, everyone's on LinkedIn, but as the times have changed, especially from my experience, as soon as I left high school and started my university career, um, every single person that I knew started creating their own LinkedIn platform and putting up their education, their previous work, and it shows that there's such a huge amount of Gen Z people who are looking to work on these big platforms. So as it says here, extensive Gen Z presence. There's been a significant increase in the Gen Z usage of LinkedIn. There's a huge amount of opportunity for brand visibility. A lot of Gen Z are looking to follow big businesses as well as small businesses that come up on their feed. So it's such a great way to find that person that you are looking for. One of the greatest things that I've experienced with LinkedIn is the mentorship kind of side of things. When I worked in sales, I joined quite a few events that came up on my feed within my notifications. And in those events, there's a lot of things that I learn. And obviously those companies were on my radar, and I was looking to hopefully move to those companies as I get older. Or when I first saw them, I was looking to apply. So being able to have that ability to seek the mentorship as well as gain the mentorship from these events is really big. And as a company yourself, you can obviously host these events and get as many people in there as possible. When it comes to the numbers and what we found is 80% of Gen Zers across the world feel like they're trusted and they trust LinkedIn as a brand. There's a lot of other platforms that you can use that are not as known, which is why this is my main go-to that I would say for hiring Gen Z. I feel that, in my opinion, it's kind of a safe space for posting, especially when it comes to leaving high school and not really knowing what to post as a professional, compared to like Instagram and Snapchat, that sort of stuff. You're not really too sure what to post, but when it comes to creating your first posts and really wanting to reach out to businesses, a lot of us feel like it's a safe space to actually post what we want and get good engagement. Another great platform that you can use is Handshake. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's the biggest Gen Z platform in terms of it's only full of Gen Z. So you're able to really target your hiring towards the people that you would want. So Handshake has a vast user base of college students, recent graduates who are always seeking the internships and entry-level positions. They always partnership with universities. So it's such a great way to really see, who you can go for, what modules people are learning, what courses people are doing, so you can really target who you want to hire. They have internship opportunities, so you can partner with them to help you find that intern, which is always great instead of hiring yourself and going out doing all the interviews, that sort of stuff. They do a lot of campus recruitment, which is great. Handshake, they have in-person, virtual events, that sort of stuff to really attract Gen Z. So you have a good view of everyone that they have on their platform. And of course, the numbers for it and what you can really see when you do sign up to this platform is you can see a lot of the stuff on there is based around the US. So you have a lot of places which have, high density of students and low density. As Marco mentioned earlier, of course, hybrid learning is the most important thing. So you can have people come in and also work virtually. And of course, the most important platform to use is obviously here at Apprentice. Apprentice in itself is the best way for hiring. Of course, I work here and I was found through this matching process that we have. The students here, it's really based on mentorship as being the biggest thing. As someone who has only recently started my career. You know, before apprentice, I didn't really have much experience. Really, there wasn't really too much open for me, and my school didn't really do too much. But after searching around and finding the, you know, the go-to platforms to really, you know, get myself out there, creating my LinkedIn account, I found Apprentice. And one of the key things is, you know, students being brought to you with a 5% acceptance rate, saving a lot of time and money. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things. As well as that, ongoing support, you know, for me personally, having that person who I can always go to for mentorship and you know, getting the most important information and resources to build myself as an entrepreneur, as well as just being someone who's new to the workforce, having the ability to learn from others who have you know, succeeded thus far. We're going to move on to retaining Gen Z. Marco is obviously the expert in this, so I'll pass it over to you.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So a big, as I mentioned previously, 57,000 Rand on average, $3,500 per employee, and that doesn't matter at any level. So it's really a costly experience for small businesses or for large to continue be hiring and looking for talent and vetting. It's such a problem, such an amazing, but platforms like Apprentice to vet for us. So yeah, I'm really excited to sharing a bit more about how do we retain this group of individuals. I think it's a huge problem worldwide. A lot of companies think it's individual to them. It's not. It's happening across the globe. People are just so uncertain just with where the economy is at and where they themselves are at. And I always like to joke and say a lot of companies have to do a lot of parenting, right? Because you're actually grooming a young person to figuring out life, which is totally okay, right? Sometimes you'll make good guesses, sometimes you won't. And so, yeah, it's using the best suited possible. And I think one thing is like asking good questions, like asking, you know, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And even if they're very unsure, if you can build trust and rapport around that and slowly work out what their passions are and what their side hustles are. I always say every Gen Z person has a side hustle. They just haven't told you about it. And so thinking about how do you give opportunities for them to work? I recently spoke to a CEO and he was like, absolutely not. You know, we're not going to give Gen Z, they're supposed to be working on our work. And I said to him, I totally understand that. But at the same time, from a bottom line point of view, that's what you want to focus on. And if you're going to lose that opportunity anyway, because they're going to just leave in 6 months' time, you could say to me, yes, they weren't the right person. But oftentimes, it's just certain elements that they get boredom of redundant work and they want to just play around with side hobbies. It doesn't have to always be starting their own business. Sometimes it's just small creative things, and giving them that opportunity is really, really powerful. So the thing that we started was Side Hustle Friday. So once a month on a Friday, they took half the day just spent on their side hustle and on their hobby and being creative and learning. And sometimes you can do that as a team, or you can give them individual. Something interesting about co-working spaces. A lot of companies globally have entered this co-working space revolution. However, because Gen Z are very insecure in many ways in terms of their human interaction, they actually don't like co-working spaces. And the reason being is that if someone's looking over my shoulder, I see them as a threat and thinking that actually, hey, I'm doing something wrong, or they're going to judge me in terms of my failure. And so we've seen that they actually like individual working spaces just because they like to deliver and work on their work separately and then come together. That's not to say that they don't like working in teams, but it's rather to say when they're actually doing the work, they don't want to feel unnecessary pressure. Where millennials are very known as team orientated, and sometimes it can be hard. And we're seeing that disconnect between millennials and Gen Z in terms of millennials are very team orientated and, you know, let's do the project together and let's sit together, where Gen Z are like, hey guys, we don't really want to approach it like that. So that's quite an interesting comparison in terms of those two generations. And then Gen X, of course, are like, just get the results and just get it done. And so that, you know, everyone's kind of fighting amongst that. In terms of recognizing a reward, this is huge. They want instant feedback. I always say to bottom line managers, it's like, don't wait a month to send in that email. Don't wait till their reporting session and giving them feedback on that. If you've got a problem with them, do it on the day. In fact, walk up to them and tell them straight, because they want to get time to think about that. And if it's only coming in a month, they're not going to prioritize it or think if it's a big issue. So that's quite interesting, is giving feedback directly and instantaneously. And then, of course, rewarding. Like, how do you set up incentives that are potentially weekly? Like, we know one of the craziest things is that Gen Z want weekly wages. They want to get paid on a weekly basis. Now, of course, this doesn't work for most companies, but it's things like that to start thinking about in terms of how your organization can navigate rewarding Gen Z, whether that's competitions and programs within teams or as a whole, or inviting them to get that feedback instantly through CRMs and different opportunities. So we know that's really, really important for them. And then in terms of growth and development, like, it's really good to sow succession plans. It's really good to share, like, hey, this is your opportunity to grow in the company. I want you to be a part of this long term. I want you to join this organization, and let them really buy into the values and the vision of the company. As much as you may think, or they might not express that they value that, they do. And it's one of the factors why they stay in a company. It's because they see opportunity for growth. And of course, as I said previously, retaining is a big thing of do they like their coworkers and do they like their boss? Moving on to the next slide. So yeah, work preferences, value-driven. As I said, climate change, mental health, racial equality, gender equality, these are all really important things. As soon as you break that, you break trust, you break certain barriers. Showcasing that, a lot of companies are not good at showcasing. So they have a lot of this stuff, but it's all in documentation on the back end instead of showcasing it in the front end. And so lean into your purpose and values. 93% of students believe that it's important for companies to be socially responsible. It's a huge thing from a marketing point of view. Drive that, use that as an emotional capture for lead generation. Use that as a way of getting competitive advantage in the market versus other companies who don't express that. So yeah, that's really, really important. Moving on to the next slide. And then, positive and connected work culture. I said 3 to 4 times a week, even 2 to 3 times a week is fine. Engaging on a weekly basis. Some companies do this thing called First Fridays on the first of the month. They take from 11 till 3 p.m. They have lunch together. They go through like team announcements. Each division of team has to present something. It makes it quite a fun thing. The build up of the whole week, they get to prepare and do that and build rapport with the team and showcase their talent. So that's really, really cool. And then like also, we know that from a mental health point of view, it's just like crazy to see what's going on from a suicide and depression rates. So it's really important to actually check in and see like, how are these people doing from a human level? How they, if something's wrong, you can kind of see. That's what I like about in-person versus virtual. It's really hard to read someone and a team online. As I mentioned previously, pay is super important to them in terms of incentives, flexible work schedules, employee benefits, retirement funds or, bonuses. Those are really significant. And then, social connections within the workplace. I said, facilitate networking opportunities, align with the company mission and values. That's why I said one of the key questions from an interview point of view is like, what do you stand for? What really frustrates you about the world? What really excites you about the world? In your last job, what is the most frustrating thing that your boss did? And that kind of figures out, because I don't know if you've noticed, but when you do a lot of interviews with young people, they're very hesitant. They don't know what to answer. They try to put on this mask a lot of the time and have these perfect answers. And until you actually build trust with them, they're really hard to build trust with. Once you do, they open up. And so asking questions like that, not just the surface level ones, can be really, really important. Next slide.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Marco. And it's definitely great being able to be on this call with so many of my mentees as well. And one of the things that I've sort of realized when I first started as an apprentice, or first started my I guess my career, my entrepreneurial career, was really around investing in those that are going to go on and do great things. And I've been someone that has been invested in by my mentor when I first joined apprentice. So I was, I guess you could say, mentored and invested in to the extent that I became an entrepreneur myself. And one of the ways that you can tap into that, early stage, high potential, i.e. people that are going to go and work in the top firms. And here's the thing with the top firms is that we're always competing with them, even if we don't realize it. If you're a small business, you might be thinking, well, I'm not necessarily competing with McKinsey. I'm not necessarily competing with Deutsche Bank, but you are from a talent perspective. So the top firms are going to have access to Gen Z. They're investing an enormous amount of resources in attracting them. Marco works with many of these companies and consults them and advises them on how to do that. So one of the ways that we can do this is tap into them at an early stage when they're still in college, before they're going to be earning $100,000, $200,000 when they graduate at some of these top firms, and get access to them today. And many of these apprentices actually go on and work with their entrepreneurs afterwards, like I did myself. We can go to the next slide. So if you're looking to tap into that generation of talent, those that really understand the trends, they really understand what's happening in marketing right now, they're understanding what's happening in AI. And maybe you might not have access to those as graduates because they're going to be working, the top talent is going to be working somewhere else, going to be working at top firms, starting their own businesses. Tap into them earlier and get help in some of these 4 areas here. So you work in operations, marketing, business development, and data. If you can jump to the next slide. And the way that we do this is we've realized, and as sort of Simon and Mark have explained on this call, it really comes down to the person, it comes down to the individual, and whether there's synergy and there's a match. And as much as we have the hard skills, we have the training, we have all of the criteria that you need to ensure that the work is being done, we put a lot of energy, a lot of resources, and a lot of time into making sure that it's a right fit from a personal perspective, looking at things like personality type, core values, skills, but also professional interests and anything that they want to do afterwards. So just to kind of really quickly wrap up, but we'll kind of end with a couple of questions, a couple of answers. If you are interested in bringing an apprentice to your team, so some of the brightest kids in the USA from the top schools, the first finance will get 50% off the first month. You can use that QR code here or use apprenticeintro.com. I guess my final question that I have personally, and of course anyone else feel free to put it in the chat for you, Marco, specifically around sort of working with entrepreneurial students. Do you feel like Gen Z is just generally more entrepreneurial? Do you feel like that's something that has happened from just a change in society? And how can companies best leverage that so there isn't that fear that, okay, well, they're going to go and start their own business? How can companies best manage that entrepreneurial and that sort of creativity?
Yeah, so I believe definitely they are more entrepreneurial. One of them being the 2008 crash and just this financial pressure. We saw a lot of studies showcase that they want to support their families during COVID. In fact, they felt inclined to, and that's why they took many jobs that they didn't want to. It's because of the pay was better. And then secondly, access, right? If you think about my journey of starting businesses and even being on this call right now from South Africa, it's access. Technology has created this ability to start a business, basically no money. And so I think that's really one of the two key factors. And of course, it does make it difficult for many companies from a retention point of view. I think how we navigate that is not one through side hustles, which I mentioned, like to not deny it, because a lot of companies or that will be like a red flag, and that'll be something that they think about from an interview point of view as a negative thing, when actually it actually shows a bit of a track record, right? Like it shows the person can deliver, it shows the person has this motivation to actually create and do things. I guess it's like, how do we take those skills or those interests and allow them to best do that in their work? And so, for example, if someone's really interested in computer science and has got a side project, but they're an accountant, okay, cool. How do you learn to integrate those systems and new learnings to better the company? And then incentivizing and rewarding them based on that. So it's kind of learning, using their interests plus what they actually, the things they've been working on from an entrepreneurial point of view to best better the company instead of their own self-inflicting things the whole time.
That's it. And I guess this question could be really for Simon, because and by the way, I totally hear you on the side hustle side, because when I was first working with Apprentice, I was luckily able to start my own business at the same time, and I did both in tangent, and then that went well. But I've also found that in my experience, one of the greatest things for me has been seeing so many of my apprentices start businesses of their own. Now, realistically, people are not going to stay in a company forever. Some do, some stay for a very long time. Most don't. I always like to feel that when they go and leave, that they're going to go and leave and do something, hopefully a little bit better than what they were doing working with me, because at least I feel like I've the sense of, okay, well, at least I grabbed onto someone, or I got to work with someone that was capable of doing that. If I can have someone that can build and one of my apprentices has gone on to build a very successful company, two have actually gone and done that. I'm like, great. How lucky was I to have access to them when I did? And sometimes I feel like maybe I should have leveraged them more. So for you, Simon, one of the key things with Gen Z is naturally they're going to be a little bit less experienced because they're on the earlier generational side. So when you're connecting entrepreneurs and companies with Gen Zers, what are some of the traits or some of the things that those companies look for, or that you recommend that they look for, that might be outside of the sort of more basic things like experience? Like, what are some of the things that you've seen that has predicted success differently in Gen Z that maybe in other situations could be different?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think from what I usually see and what I like to recommend is core values. I think you can tell a lot by a person with the core values that they have. Same thing goes for a company as well. One of my most successful matches with an entrepreneur and an apprentice, their core values were, loyalty. That was one of their core values. And when the apprentice said it before the entrepreneur could, as being one of their main core values, I knew that they were going to be a perfect match, and I knew that they were going to get great work done. They went on to actually end up meeting in person. They were across state, but they ended up meeting in person, and I think they still work together now. The apprentice isn't with us anymore, and they are working full time with the entrepreneur, and they're having such a great time together. I think I'm pretty sure they're doing a lot of stuff, but that's one of the biggest things. Matching Gen Z with an entrepreneur is making sure core values align. You can really tell whether or not someone's going to be successful with someone if they align in core values, not just their hard skills.
And just to add on to that, I think that's why the human element, like using personality profiling tools such as the Enneagram, is so key, because like that allows you to really see who the person is behind the scenes and not who they are in front of the camera. Or who they say they're on LinkedIn, so like this, everyone's successful on LinkedIn, and everyone's, their best works on LinkedIn. So I think that's really, really important. And then secondly is, in terms of like, Simon, what you were just saying, I think it's really important to, I'm trying to think of just gone blank on my point, but okay, I'll come back to it, but I'll come back to me now.
Awesome. Yeah, and by the way, I think the personal touch that was mentioned earlier is really key, and the Enneagram is really, really great. We use the Enneagram apprentice for the matching, but also I use it for my own team. I've used it in all of my businesses. I've used the Enneagram when working with my team, because I'm able to adjust, not only able to put the right people in the right seats, but I'm able to adjust my communication to those people, how to best motivate those people based on the Enneagram. And that's the case for not just Gen Zs, but really for anyone. But particularly with Gen Z, because Gen Z do have a sense of, they feel very strongly about wanting to feel heard. And I think that's something that has been very evident and seen with Gen Z. And I think it's interesting because although I mentioned, like with apprentices, and all of our apprentices go and work at corporate, they've been very clear with us that they're going to work for corporate for about a year, and then they're going to go work somewhere else to start their own thing. And the reason why we've been able to attract so many Gen Zers and college students into us when they could be taking internships at some of these big firms has been because they preferred working with smaller businesses. They preferred working with entrepreneurs where they have more value. They contribute more. And one of the big things that I've mentioned before is being able to make an impact. And there's two ways you can make an impact as an employee. One of them is an impact on the business, and feeling like you're actually helping the business grow. You're adding value to the business. You're feeling appreciated for those things, but also you're making an impact to the world. So the business is doing secondary by that, is making an impact to the world. And my first business that I started Remembering Live, when we were doing virtual memorial services, was really kind of for many of my employees, or actually all of my employees, I'd say, was the main part of that. They were contributing to the business growth. It was very early stage, but also they were contributing towards helping grieving families grieve in a time that was very difficult. So I was just asked, what does Apprentice really do? Is it recruiting, mentoring, or placement agency? So the way that it works with Apprentice is we take these students while they're still in school, and they're working while they're studying, so part-time. And we already screen and recruit the apprentices, so you don't have to do any of the screening or any of the work there. So we'll take maybe 1,000 applicants, narrow that down to about 100 each month that we bring into our program. And then out of that 100, we'll then start to screen them, interview them, and then give you about 3 to 5 profiles per role to then select and work with. And that list has already been screened down based on all the things that we've spoken about: personality, career interests, skills, etc. And then you work with the apprentice as you would do with any normal employee. And we continue working with you to continue to support you, support the apprentices, provide you new apprentices if you need, anything like that, we're still working with you. In terms of will the slides be sent? So we'll send the recording. We'll also send an ebook version of this deck, so it's a little bit more easier to read. What is your advice for non-profits that may be able to compete on salary alone? So I'm gonna answer this question, and then I'm gonna throw it to any of you guys as well. So my first business, Remembering Live, wasn't a non-profit, but it was a bootstrapped business that was very, very early stage. So we grew pretty much the first week of lockdown, and we really had employees, kind of like a month, 2 months in, to handle the volume that we had. We didn't have a lot of money because we were building the business at the same time. And you can imagine building a business, registering the business, investing in your marketing, doing everything you're doing, very, very expensive. So we weren't working with a huge profit margin at the time. And there are a couple of ways that you can do this when you're a non-profit, because for us, it could be options, it could be equity. For a non-profit, it's difficult to do that. In my experience, because we've worked with non-profits before, this goes back to something that isn't just for non-profits, it's for companies that can also include salary. It's it's attracting the people that really, really care about where the company is, or where the organization is going and what it's doing for the world. And there's lots of non-monetary ways you can reward people that we've discussed, all the ways that you can motivate, all the ways you can provide growth. And sometimes it's okay to acknowledge that maybe for many employees, it can either be towards the end of their career, so they've had a good career and now they're thinking of doing something that they're more deeply passionate about. Maybe their salary isn't as important, maybe they're working off investments or other ways of income. The other way could be mid-career, in which case, as Marco suggested, helping them and supporting them if they have side hustles. Because if you can't compete on salary and they have to earn and they have to pay rent, maybe they are starting their own business, maybe they are working part-time. So making sure that you're allowing space for them to earn beyond that. And then the final one is the one which we would recommend, with just from the Gen Z perspective, is that this could be an entry to a career. And maybe you're only going to have them for a year or 2 years, maybe less, but you're going to utilize as much productivity as possible. And you're not going to be disingenuous about the fact that we don't expect you to stay for the rest of your lives, but we just want to have the best 2 years we can possibly have with this employee, knowing that maybe they're going to take a route somewhere else because this is going to help them get there. So that's typically what I've seen with nonprofits do. Marco, Simon, is there anything that you've seen or heard in the past that you want to share?
Simon, you want to go? I've got to.
Yeah, I guess especially with Gen Z now, a lot of us base what we want to do on what we're passionate about. So nonprofits are such a great way for us to enter the workforce, as Sam said, as like an entry level, to do something that we actually are passionate about and know that we're helping out. I've seen recently that a lot of people that I know, a lot of people that I'm connected with on LinkedIn, are currently starting to work with nonprofits, because one, it's a great way to gain the experience, but also two, you're helping out people or a cause that you're very passionate about yourself, but don't have the ability to create your own nonprofit or to create your own charity. So you're able to get that fulfillment and help out at the same time without having to, start it yourself and also gain the knowledge and experience from working in general.
And then I would just add is there are millions of young people that are looking for experience and looking for jobs. And so I'd be very careful to lock them in for anything more than 6 months. In fact, my marketing approach would be, hey, come try it out for 2 weeks. Just come and test and see if this is something that you want to be a part of for long term, and then look at 3 or 6 month cycles. Because as soon as you start saying things like a year or 2 years, they start to think to themselves, hey, actually, I don't want to commit for that long. I want to move on to things. And so I think that's something you can do from a marketing point of view. Then two is like, from an experience point of view, go to universities, build relationships with as many universities as you can, and just literally post a job. I posted a recent job sales position. I got 200 people apply for a part-time sales position from one university. People are just desperate for anything. And so it's not that you want those desperate people, it's more that there's these ways that you can reach young people without paying huge advertising and huge methods like, LinkedIn or whatever it is. And so I think that's really key, is build key partnerships with universities, market the experience and exposure for themselves. Like tell them you'll get a great testimonial from them, and you'll get them exposure through that avenue. And I think those are really cool ways. Like nonprofits have got in many ways more leverage than companies. So I think, yeah, just to answer your question.
And alternatively, without sounding super salesy, but just before we wrap up, if you want to do that more quickly and you want to have a constant pipeline of students, then we are here to help you. And by the way, even if you are not looking at bringing an apprentice on yourself, but you want to chat with anyone from our team, just in general about anything we can support you with, anything at all, here's our link to schedule time with our team. I don't think we have any more questions. So unless Marco, Simon, you have any last thoughts you want to share, we can wrap this up.
Cool, yeah, just maybe if there's anyone got a question, maybe just pop it in right now. Otherwise, I'll quickly make my last concluding thoughts. Cool, I don't think we've got anything on LinkedIn as well. I would just say that I think Gen Z don't overcomplicate it. At the end of the day, we see all this content, we see all these people, we see all these companies proposing these different things, and they're just a group of people like us. And whoever you're watching is, whether you're millennial, Gen X, or Boomer. And I think the big thing is thinking about how do we use a strong suit. Like they are very technology driven, they are very technology aware. Like leverage that. In fact, I know some NGOs who are using people from India and South Africa to build out lead generation, like that sales. Like you don't need even someone in your own country. And that's the beauty thing about technology, is that it globalization, it allows you to leverage the world. And I think, so be aware of that and start to think about how do you restructure your company to fit everything we hear, but then also just understanding and awareness, like be aware of these factors and these characteristics that we're sharing, because it's really important. One or two of these small things, like we've shared a bunch, but just implement one or two things that really resonate with you. And I promise you, you will start to see results. And then lastly, like content is everything. My personal brand has brought me some of the most incredible partnerships and employees. And so if you're an owner of any sub of business, whether you're a young person, you're a professional, build a personal brand, put content out there, showcase your narrative, because your narrative is so beautiful and unique.
Awesome. And definitely on the international front, utilizing the world, we've got all three of us are all, I'm from London, but I'm living in New Jersey, Marco's in South Africa, and Simon's back in the UK. And our company is based in the USA, and I would say 99% of our apprentices are also from the USA. So definitely leveraging international talent is super key. So yeah, so thank you so much for joining. Marco, Simon, thank you so much for helping out and providing such valuable insights on this call. I've learned a lot, and excited to see you all at the next webinar. Have a great rest of your day.